Let's go to the biggest game of the day, really the biggest sound of the day, a huge thud in the Midwest. Once again, the Giant Killers come up out of their cave and got one. Michigan State Spartans go down to Purdue, and it wasn't even close. No smoke and mirrors, no 80-yard field goal with time expanding. I mean, like expiring. They knock out the Spartans, and Michigan State's basically out right now. So, our resident Big Ten expert, Christian Hackenberg, you're looking right there. There we go. This is kind of what we expected, but kind of not what we expected. We expected Titans to knock out Titans, not middleweights to knock out Titans. But again, Purdue has this knack.
Yeah, it's
Dagan,
that's
can
off
you
to
go
him,
back up
man.
with the stats, Dagan? Go ahead, Hack.
So the crazy part is, I mean, Michigan State still went for damn near 500 yards total offense today. They were 6-13 on third down, which is pretty acceptable. But they did lose a fumble and they did throw an interception. Ultimately, in those types of games, Purdue came out, didn't hurt themselves. They did have one fumble, but didn't hurt themselves as much as Michigan State. And like you said, George, I mean, they pretty much walked into that game and played with them blow for blow, slug for slug. They did have one trick play, which was pretty sweet. But other than that, I mean, they really just played clean football and operated and executed. For Michigan State, you know, it's a little bit of a letdown. But that's one of the things that watching them, you did see defensively, even watching the Michigan game, they're super aggressive on defense. I mean, they really don't not necessarily super sound. A lot of times they'll send the house, play that 3 deep, 2 under coverage, hope they hit home. And if you as an offense can get the ball out in those situations and get the ball in space and capitalize on that, it leaves yourself vulnerable from a defensive standpoint. So I think Michigan State played on par offensively. Like I said, I don't think it was a letdown. Anytime you put up 500 yards, you feel pretty good about yourselves. But I think defensively, they shot their shot, and Purdue capitalized where teams in the past haven't been able to capitalize, and it ultimately caught up to them. I don't think it's one of those things where Michigan State needs to go back to the drawing board and reconfigure. It's just that type of thought process. That type of thought process caught up to them, and it was what it was. So again, hats off to Purdue. You can't take any of the credit away, but for Michigan State, there's still ball in front of them, and I just hope they keep their heads down and keep chopping wood, because there's some opportunities coming down the pipe for them.
Oh, no doubt. Oh, our producer, Dagan Hughes, just came up with just sent over a question from our man Randy in Tampa. This one is for Trevor Knight. Michigan State plays Maryland, Ohio State, Penn State in the next 3 weeks. Randy from Tampa wants to know, Trevor, if they run the table, are they still a heavyweight in the Final Four?
Not at this point. I mean, absolutely not. Right. It's tough to say if they are going to come out and be a heavyweight with a loss like this. Yes, Purdue's the giant killer, but I think there's other teams, like I mentioned before, that are going to come out of the back and just have better marquee wins, right? It'll certainly be in the conversation. I'd love to hear Hack's thoughts on that. I know he's shaking in his boots over there, but that's my gut feeling right now as we go into this final stretch.
It's just more and more of the argument. It's more and more of the argument as to why this whole thing needs to get expanded. And I think it'd be good for college football. It'd be good for teams like this, because on any Saturday, someone can slip up, right? There's going to be a few teams who do their thing, but it puts people in really tough situations when it comes to who they're inserting. Let's let the kids play it out. Let's put the best 12 teams out there, which gives a lot of representation, whether it be conference champion, non-conference champion, the 2 best teams from the Power Fives, and then throw in 2 wild cards and let the guys play it out. I think it'd be great for the fans. I think it'd be great when it comes to being able to fulfill those Cinderella stories, and no one is sitting there at the end of the season with those what ifs. If you're not a top 12 team, I think that's enough. And you have to swallow that pill. But if you're in there, you at least have a chance to play it out and see what happens. And I think that the sport needs it and the people need it, in my opinion.
I agree. Bryce Petty, can you, like, a lot of attention, and I just did it here on our own run here. Like, sometimes the headliner losing is the headline, and it shouldn't always be like that. Michigan State lost tonight because Purdue knocked them out. And this is the second top 5 team Purdue has knocked out. Like, can you take the people at home inside the Purdue program and what kind of culture, what kind of connectivity, and what kind of fire they must be rolling on right now to get up for these monster games?
Yeah, I mean, interestingly enough, I think there's just teams that really do rise to the occasion. I think there's teams that love to have big games, away locker rooms, home locker rooms. It doesn't really matter, that they just wake up with a little bit more juice than when they're just playing, a smaller Division I, a team that they can beat, kind of handily and should be. I think Purdue and what Jeff Brom has done over the last couple of years there has kind of presented this culture of allowing these guys to rise to the occasion. And to be totally honest with you, I'd love to go, on a Tuesday, Wednesday practice, to Indiana and see these guys on a week where, they got a top 5 matchup or a top 10 matchup because, and as we've talked about it and Hacks mentioned before, the Big Ten, man, is not a cupcake lead by any means. And I think we've seen that week in and week out. And so Purdue, again, kind of in the West behind Wisconsin, behind Minnesota, they do enough to just continue to have their name in the mix. And I think, again, that's kind of top down. That's the culture top down. When you get forgotten about, it takes games like this to get you back on the national scene. And I think they just love to be there.
I love it. So we have some upheaval in the Big Ten, but we knew it was going to come down like this. We didn't know it was going to come from the giant killers.